This is a dough whisk. I got this thing 10 years ago and I never used it. It stayed in a drawer in the kitchen, and somehow after moving a couple times and just cleaning out the kitchen, it never got donated. For the last 6 months, I've been using this to mix all of my dough. And with 6 months of use, about 5 days a week, I have some opinions about this tool. I don't know why I got this thing. I feel like it was one of those like impulse Amazon buys where maybe I saw somebody using it on Instagram or YouTube and I was kind of curious and I bought it and I thought I'd use it and I never did. But this is a dough whisk. Sometimes it's called a Danish dough whisk. If you do some Googling research, which is about all I've done, as far as like which one to get, the more loops that it has inside, the more it is compatible with a thinner, lighter dough. When it has fewer loops, it's more compatible with like a thicker, denser dough, like a bread dough. And that's what I've been using this thing for, to mix my dough. And I'm kind of a big proponent of mixing dough by hand, and I've been mixing all my sourdough for the last 12 years by hand. And when you have like the right technique, it's not that sticky. You just have to keep it off the palm of your hand, and it's a pretty easy, seamless process. It takes 5 minutes. For a beginner baker, I think that this is not a go-to tool. I think a beginner baker who's brand new to mixing bread dough, in particular like sourdough, they should be using their hand. There's a lot of really important tactile feedback that you get from mixing by hand, where you can feel how it goes from water and flour, where it feels like it's never going to come together, to becoming that sticky, thick, shaggy mass, and being able to feel the dry spots and then the puddly spots, and really start to understand how the dough comes together. If you skip the learning process of mixing by hand, I feel like your depth of knowledge and mastery of sourdough baking is just not going to be on point. And I think this is kind of a shortcut to mixing dough. Now, I will say this. I've worked with a woman, I've taught a woman to bake sourdough bread who has very small hands. She's 4'11", she weighs 90 pounds, she has little tiny hands, and a tool like this has been great for her. I've worked with another guy, a gentleman who had wrist injury, he's got carpal tunnel, can't use his wrist and his hand very well. This is a great tool for that guy. But in general, like for our general population who's not injured or doesn't have like a physical limitation of tiny hands, I think mixing by hand is a really important skill to acquire before you insert this tool. So that's just kind of my 2 cents, my warning of if you don't know how to mix dough by hand, don't get one of these yet. Now, what do I like about this thing? So I forced myself to use this for 6 months, because if I don't have experience with it, what kind of opinion can I have about it? I've mixed, other than like some chocolate chip bread, I've used this to mix all of my dough, and I've really come to like it. And here's why. My dough baking, my dough mixing happens first thing in the morning. So I feed my starter at 9 p.m., 7 a.m., boom, it's ready. I mix dough. And at about that time, sometime between 6 and 7 a.m., the dog wants to go out, I'm making coffee. There's little odds and ends and like silly things that are happening in the kitchen. This takes my hand out of the bowl and keeps the dough off of my hands. So if the water's up to a boil, I can stop what I'm doing and go pour my water into the French press. Or the dog wants to come back in, I let her in, I don't have to like bring my bowl with me and use my elbow to open the slider. Just like it's small things like that makes it feel really, it makes my morning feel easier. Now, as far as mixing goes, it's quick. So here's a 400 gram batch of dough. So when I say 400 grams, I'm talking purely about the flour weight. And in this recipe, I'll throw it in the description just for fun, it's 400 grams of flour. So we've got 300 grams of water, 75% hydration. We've got 80 grams of starter, which is 20% of my flour weight. And we're gonna mix all this together. We're gonna use the dough whisk. This is gonna, watch, 40 seconds and this is gonna be mixed together. So I know I left the salt out. We're gonna go through an auto-lees. It's a best practice. It's just what we're doing. So here we go. Everything's in the bowl. I can use the whisk to blow apart my starter into the water, bring it into solution so it gets distributed into my water so it gets thoroughly combined into my flour. And then I add my flour, I mix it with the whisk, and you are the Hobart machine, you are the KitchenAid. So just work in a circle. You can use the edge of the dough whisk to scrape down the sides of the bowl as you go. It's going to become very thick. And we can use the dough whisk to just work it around, make sure that we're getting all those water puddles and all those dry flour pockets. And then pro tip here, what am I doing? I'm spreading the dough all over the side of the bowl because there are those crusty bits on the side of the bowl, right? And this is how you clean your bowl. You use the dough. So use the dough whisk, spread it up along the sides of the bowl, and then we can come around with a bowl scraper, boom, 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 scrape it down. Now we have a nice clean bowl, and we can set this aside 30 to 45 minutes. We'll get our first stretch and fold, which is when we add in our salt. I'm not going to go into autolyse and the whole dough making process, but what is that? That's 40 seconds of bringing together a 400 gram batch of dough. Quick, easy, my hands are clean. This thing is easy to wash. I've been using it for 6 months, probably 5 or 6 days a week. I make a lot of bread, a lot of different kinds of dough, and this thing has held up great. It looks brand new to me. Now, a double batch is usually how I roll. This is a double batch in this bowl. This is an 800 gram batch that I made this morning. 800 grams, purely my flour weight. It's how we refer to dough recipe size because everything is a percentage of the flour weight. Of course, this dough weighs more than 800 grams once you add in the water and the starter and the salt. But just for our baseline communication here, an 800 gram batch in my house is a double batch. It will get divided into 2 bannetons during shaping. I think an 800 to 1,000 gram batch is your max size with this thing. And I don't know if there's a bigger size. There's got to be a bigger one, like with maybe a bigger loop to work a larger batch of dough. But that's my limit. 1,000 grams, and it's kind of a workout. And I don't think it does a good job. Like it's at capacity there. 800 grams, you're going to take a little bit more time to really get through the flour and the water and bring it together. But it's totally doable. It's just going to take a little bit more effort. I'm mixing in a 5.5 quart. 5.5 quart? Yes, 5.5 quart mixing bowl. Probably would be easier maybe in like a 7 quart or something like that. Maybe just like a size up the bowl. But totally doable. 4 minutes. I mean, I'm not really saving a ton of time mixing with this, but it keeps my hands clean and my hands free to do other things in the kitchen. This is I got this on Amazon. It was like 13 bucks. There are a whole bunch of different ones. I recommend one with as few loops as possible because we're mixing a really dense dough. When I first started making sourdough bread, I used a KitchenAid mixer just because I had one and it was easy, and I just throw everything in and you turn it on, you mix it, turn it off. You get your next stretch and fold that happens in there, and it's just super easy. And then I wanted to streamline things. If I was going to help people, if I was going to teach people how to make sourdough bread, not everybody has a KitchenAid mixer. It's an expensive piece of equipment. It's the kind of thing that you get for a wedding present. And that's how we got ours. But bread making is a very fundamental thing. It's a basic thing. We've been doing it for thousands of years, and you can do it with your hand. And that's great, and I think that's an important method to use in learning how to bake bread. This is an excellent tool. I highly recommend it. I think everybody should get one of these. Definitely put in your reps as a beginner and start to understand how your dough feels, because when you understand its behavior and the temperature and the texture and the feel, it's going to make the rest of the process more instructive. So you can feel how things change, and you have a better awareness of where your dough started, how it feels in the first, second, third, and fourth stretch and fold, and then even into shaping. Having your hands on your dough is really important, and not being scared to manipulate it, or that it's, becoming aware of, oh, it's stickier today because maybe it's warmer in the kitchen, or oh, it's drier today because maybe your water was a little too cold. All those things come with handling your dough by hand, but this is an excellent tool. I highly recommend it. Link in the description. It's a dough whisk. It looks nothing like a whisk to me.